You're watching MNF Retro, and we have just seen Manchester United beat Arsenal 6-1 in February 2001 as they went on to win their third successive Premier League title. We're getting loads of your tweets this evening. Thank you so much for those. Glad to see that we are bringing a little bit of light amidst all the darkness around right now. Hashtag MNF Retro if you want to have yours say as well. Ayo Alabi has said this. What did Dwight Yorke have for breakfast that day? He was magnificent, Gary. Tell us.
Yeah, I think obviously we saw that Arsenal's centre-backs obviously weren't their strongest pair. When you think that where they'd been in the previous years to that, with obviously Adams and Bold and then Martin Keown, and obviously to come after that was Sol Campbell and Kolo Touré. They had Grimandi and Stepanovs that day, who obviously were good third and fourth centre-backs for Arsenal. But when they were both playing together at Old Trafford in the form that we were in, Yorkie, we had great centre forwards, and whoever they were playing against would be difficult. But obviously they exploited everything that went wrong for Arsenal that day. It was just a case that Dwight Yorke, he was an unbelievable player really, because he could do all things. He could score goals, he could set up play, he could run in behind, he could dribble, he could obviously bring other people into play. He was the all-round centre forward, and it always transpired that whoever the four centre forwards we had, whichever of the two of the four we had on the pitch, they could all play with each other. So it didn't really matter whether it was Yorke and Cole, or Yorke and Solskjaer, or Yorke and Sheringham, or Sheringham and Cole. They all had good combinations with each other, and Yorkie was just a brilliant player.
Tom Rinn has asked this, Gary. You've always said that Scholes was the best player you've played with, but what was the best strike partnership that you played with? And you mentioned at that time United had a pick of 4 top quality players.
It's interesting that, because when I first came into the team, it was Cantona and Hughes, and then obviously that period we had, Yorkie and Coley, and Teddy and Ollie obviously as well as strike partners. Then it went into Rude, who played sometimes with Scholes and sometimes with one of the other lads that I've just mentioned, and then it went into Wayne Rooney and Carlos Tevez, who were absolutely sensational as well. I probably think Yorke and Cole, just for that treble season where they were just absolutely sensational, the way in which they played together, they just lit up the whole league, lit up Europe. I always remember a game we played in the Champions League group stages in Barcelona, where both of them played together, and I've never seen anything like it. We conceded 3 goals. I was centre-back, but we scored 3. And he was, those two that night were absolutely brilliant. So I'd probably say those two.
And Jamie, who were the most difficult to play against, would you say, of those 4?
I always felt Andy Cole was the most difficult to play against. I think Dwight Yorke was the best player. Sometimes when you answer that, people, because I say Dwight Yorke was the better player, I'm watching Manchester United. I think he was your number 1 striker. Yeah. But in terms of what caused me a problem, Dwight Yorke was always in front of me. Andy Cole was always looking to go in behind me. So that's why he always give you a problem. You could never sort of relax within the game. When you talk about the partnerships there, though, and it was a brilliant partnership, those two. I remember we played you early on in that season, I think, or I don't know if it might have been the season before, and it almost looked like Andy Cole was going to move on at some stage. Certainly went to York, it must have been a couple of years before that season. But was that the initial idea for them to play? It didn't feel like it was. What do you think was the initial idea when he brings Yorke in? Because I think Alex Ferguson tried to bring Clivert in as well that summer and didn't get him across the line. So what do you think was it's going to be Dwight Yorke and another?
To be honest with you, when Yorkie signed, it was late on in the transfer. It felt it was late on in the it was after the start of the season, I remember, and it felt as though it was going to be like it was a surprise in some ways, because it just came out of nowhere. And obviously we knew Dwight Yorke, he played at Aston Villa and he was a good player, but you just didn't think that he was the one that was going to be coming to United. What we didn't realise, or I don't think anybody realised, was when he come to us, how good he was. I'd never realised how good he was when he played at Villa. I knew he was a good player, but not to the level sometimes that you're surprised by when he gets into your team. And I don't know what the plan was, because I don't think they really hit it off to start with in memory. I think it took maybe like 10 or 15 games for them to get together, and all of a sudden, Leicester sticks in my mind. Leicester away sticks in my mind as a league game where they both played together, and something just happened that day. And I think they started socialising together, they started getting on with each other off the pitch. There was like a respect between each other. And the thing was about those two, they didn't mind which of them scored, and that's quite unique sometimes, because when you've got like a goal scorer like Coley, or they say Ruud van Nistelrooy or Michael Owen, it's always the sort of the goal scorer needs to score for them to be happy. But actually, I think with Coley and Yorkie, they got to the point whereby they didn't care if either of them scored. They were both happy with each other.
I want to bring in another person who scored in that game, Roy Keane. Now, Roy didn't actually score many goals that season. That was one of two. Very good evening to you, Roy. I want to ask you, do you feel like you should have scored more goals for Manchester United?
No, absolutely not.
Why not?
That wasn't my job. My job was to make sure we weren't losing games and trying to win league titles. I scored plenty early in my career, so I thought, listen, I've done that bit of the game. I'll just now focus on sitting in front of the back four and dictating the game. So, no, I think you've been hard on me there. I scored plenty of training, but I just thought, listen, I'd leave that to the strikers and people like Scholesy, Giggsy and Becks, who obviously were quite keen to get forward. So you couldn't have everyone just getting in the box. So, yeah, part of a team, obviously.
Love that, Roy. Nice to have you with us this evening. In terms of the strikers that we're talking about there, though, and you've expressed your admiration on this programme before our programmes about some of those players, but if you had to pick two from that Manchester United era, who would it be?
Oh, listen, I don't like these conversations. I really don't. I think it's really unfair. I think we were very lucky with the four around that time. Obviously, it's been mentioned, you saw Yorkie there, obviously, Coley, obviously Ollie, Teddy, very, very, obviously, brilliant players. And I always try and make the point, I have to kind of remind people, but very, very good lads as well in the dressing room, good lads to be in the dressing room with. Obviously, I know that, we always talk about strikers being pretty selfish, which they have to be. But I found all them lads to be decent lads. Really, always looked at the bigger picture. Obviously, they had to bide their time. Obviously, the manager was chopping and changing. We'd change him every now and again. Obviously, part of the squad rotation, which we were probably one of the first clubs to really introduce that for all the competitions, and it worked because the players made it work. They were decent professionals. And when they got the opportunities, they went out and they done the business. We saw there, obviously, Teddy coming on and scoring a goal, and Ollie, and obviously Yorkie was on fire in that particular game. So, brilliant players, but just as important, I've always said about particularly that time at United, we had a brilliant dressing room, a really, really good dressing room, and it's nice even looking back at some of the old games there and remember what great characters we had. We were
chatting in the break, Roy, with Gary and Jamie about that season, and of course it was the third successive title that you'd won. And Gary actually said that in some ways it was an easy title to win. Would you go along with that?
No, well, believe it or not, I'm going to disagree with Gary, which I like to do. I don't fall for that at all. Honestly, I don't. I've never, throughout my career, never felt anything was easy. We made it look easy at the end, but that's because we worked so hard. We worked really hard, and even there when people were saying you're 10 or 13 points clear and you feel, the league is won, I never felt that way. I never did, and it's just in my makeup, and I wish I was a bit more relaxed regarding when we were so far clear at that particular time, but I felt I couldn't relax, and if I'd known Gary was so relaxed, I might have had a go at him. But no, I never could think that way, honestly. I've always been that was always my mindset, and never kind of happy, really.
Clearly, that was a bad day at the office for Arsenal, Roy, and we've talked about some reasons potentially why that might have been, but how much did you rivalry?
We obviously drove each other to improve. The back four wasn't the best, and then obviously we were more punishing the team who weren't quite at it. But there was huge respect. We drove each other on. Big players, big personalities, a lot of rivalry, and it was fantastic. I don't know if there's anything like it now in the Premiership. I really don't. I think there was. I'd probably use the word, there was a lot of hatred towards each other, but that was, when you retire, obviously we're looking back 20 years ago, it's more respect afterwards when you look back, but at the time you just had to be driven to try and beat these, and but we also know that day we got Arsenal on a good day, but there was still huge respect towards them, of course.
Listen, Roy, we're in a really dark time at the moment. The whole nation, the whole world is going through a dark time. What would it have been like for Roy Keane, the footballer, do you think, to have been told you can't play football for a month, 2 months, 3 months?
Listen, it's obviously very difficult for anyone. We obviously live in a bubble, particularly when you're a player. Your whole world revolves around football in terms of training, preparation, games. It's what you live for. But having said that, I think obviously I'm out of the game now, a little bit older, a little bit wiser, and listen, we have to look at the bigger picture here and take obviously this health advice and make sure everyone's keeping well and looking after themselves. and let football just go on the back burner for a few months, and this will pass. But we just have to obviously be careful and look after our health, and obviously particularly the older people who are struggling out there. So football, as much as we love it and we live for it and we breathe for it, it just has to go on the back burner for a few months, and hopefully this will pass hopefully over the next few months, and we'll get back watching the game and loving the game. But I'm certain I would have struggled when I was a player. Obviously I'm missing it dreadfully now, but obviously that's just from the outside looking in. But it must be difficult for players out there. But again, we have to look at the bigger picture. People's health is at stake. People are dying. It's a difficult time for everyone. But hopefully it will pass and we get through it.
Well said, Roy. Great to talk to you this evening. Thanks so much for coming on, and we'll hope to see you again soon.
Cheers, no problem.
I'm sure that the boys would echo those thoughts as well. I think what's come through just this evening, guys, is how many messages people have sent through to MNF Retro, how much people have enjoyed just clinging on to something else and watching a bit of football.
Yeah, I think that's... I think you said it the other day when we did that programme, I don't think we should shy away from the fact of how important football is in this country and how desperate we all are for it to return, but we know that it can't return at this moment in time. It's inconceivable that football is going to be played in the next few months. At this moment in time, it's important that obviously everybody stays home and that everybody, you know, stays as healthy as they possibly can. You know, Roy's just hit the nail on the head there, that football does pale into insignificance at this moment in time, but we should still think about that day when it returns, because it'll be a joyous day where everybody can feel free again, and you know, we'll value our freedom a lot more, I think, after these next few weeks and months.
Yeah, well said. Thank you very much, Gary. Thank you, Jamie, for your time as well. Stay safe, boys. I think the final word should go to Roy Keane there, asked tonight, as someone has just reminded me on Twitter, Niall, if he thought he should have scored more goals for Manchester United. No, my job was to make sure we won games and titles. My captain right there, he says. I hope you've enjoyed MNF Retro tonight. Do stay safe, do stay apart, and all being well, we will see you again with more football very soon. For the time being, it's bye from us.